Who killed Dele Giwa? The parcel arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. It came wrapped in confidence, stamped with authority, printed with the coat of arms of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The envelope bore the words "Confidential" and "From the Commander-in-Chief." Inside the house at 25 Talabi Street, Ikeja, Lagos, the day had started like any other. A man was having breakfast with a colleague, going over work, speaking in low tones about stories that mattered. But the parcel changed everything. Dele Giwa opened it, and in an instant he was gone. His last words, as they carried him away, bleeding and broken, were simple and haunting. "They got me!" The question left behind has never been answered. Who killed Dele Giwa, the man who asked too many questions? Sumanu Oladele Giwa was born on March 16, 1947. He grew up in Nigeria, studied English in America, and worked briefly at the New York Times before returning home. He joined the Daily Times, then moved to the Sunday Concord. By 1984, he had grown tired of working under the control of others. Along with three friends, Ray Ekpu, Dan Agbese, and Yakubu Muhammad, he co-founded Newswatch magazine. The first issue hit the streets on January 28, 1985. Newswatch was different. It was bold. It was sharp. It investigated corruption, exposed government failures, and asked questions that powerful people did not want answered. Giwa became its editor-in-chief, a man known for his commitment to truth and his refusal to bend. He had a family, wives, children, including a son named Billy, who was still young. He had built something that mattered, and in doing so, he had made enemies. By October 1986, Dele Giwa was a marked man. In the weeks leading to his death, Giwa was under pressure. He had been accused of trying to destabilize Nigeria, of planning to radicalize the nation, of gun running. These were serious allegations, the kind that came with serious consequences in a military regime. On October 16, 1986, 3 days before his death, Giwa received a phone call from Colonel Halilu Akilu, the Director of Military Intelligence. Akilu questioned him about arms importation, about meetings with dangerous people. The following day, October 17th, Giwa was summoned to the headquarters of the State Security Service, known as the SSS. His colleague and friend, Ray Ekpu, went with him. The interrogation lasted hours. The officers wanted to know about his sources, his stories, his plans. They asked about Gloria Okon, a young woman whose mysterious death in London had raised questions about high-ranking Nigerian officials. Giwa had travelled to London weeks earlier and allegedly interviewed her. He had photographs, a transcript, details that could shake the government. When Giwa left the SSS building that day, he was afraid. He called his wife, Olufunmilayo, and told her he feared for his life. On Saturday, October 18th, the phone rang again. It was Akilu, asking for directions to Giwa's house. He spoke to Funmilayo. He wanted to know how to find them. She gave him the details. That night, Giwa could not sleep. He sensed something coming, something dark and irreversible. On Sunday morning, October 19th, 1986, the sun rose over Lagos. Inside the house on Talabi Street, Dele Giwa sat in his study with Kayode Soyinka, Newswatch's London bureau chief. They were reviewing materials, pictures, and interview transcripts that Soyinka had brought from London. The two men spoke quietly, unaware that time was running out. Then Billy, Giwa's young son, walked into the room. He carried a parcel that had been delivered to the gate by unknown persons. The package was small, official-looking, stamped with government insignia. Giwa's face lit up when he saw it. According to Soyinka's later account, Giwa seemed excited, believing it might be from President Ibrahim Babangida himself, perhaps in response to discussions they had days earlier. He placed the parcel on his lap. He began to open it. The explosion was immediate and devastating. The bomb tore through Giwa's lower body, crushing his legs and ripping them from his torso. The force of the blast knocked Soyinka unconscious. Smoke filled the room. Upstairs, Funmilayo had just put their daughter, Aisha, to sleep when she heard the sound. She ran downstairs and found her husband in a pool of blood, barely breathing. They rushed him to the hospital. Doctors tried desperately to save him, but the damage was too severe. At 39 years old, Dele Giwa died from his injuries. He had been assassinated in his own home by a bomb disguised as government correspondence, delivered to his doorstep like routine mail. The next day, October 20, 1986, the Nigerian government convened a press conference. It was presided over by Augustus Ikomu, the vice president. Before it began, all foreign journalists and Nigerian reporters working for foreign media were ordered out of the room. Those who remained were told the briefing was off the record and that Ikomu would not be taking questions. The message was clear. This story would be controlled. The government announced plans for a judicial commission of inquiry into Giwa's death. The commission never materialized. Meanwhile, the prime suspects emerged quickly. Lieutenant Collier Ajibola Kunle Togun, a state security service officer who had interrogated Giwa 2 days before his death, became a person of interest. So did Colonel Halilu Akilu, the military intelligence director, who had called Giwa's house repeatedly in the days before the bombing. Both men denied involvement. Both men later won a suspiciously fast-tracked libel case against Gani Fawehinmi, the human rights lawyer who had taken up Giwa's case. There were whispers of another name, Mohammed Buba Marwa, then a young military officer who later became a state governor. Some claimed soldiers loyal to the late General Mamman Vatsa, who had been executed months earlier in May 1986 for an alleged coup plot, identified Marwa as the courier who delivered the parcel bomb. These claims were never officially confirmed. Gani Fawehinmi, relentless in his pursuit of justice, investigated for years. He accused the government of obstruction. He claimed the Lagos military government refused to allow him to privately prosecute Togun and Akilu. He called it the most frustrating case of his career. At the heart of many theories about Giwa's murder was Gloria Okon, a young Nigerian woman who died under mysterious circumstances in London in 1986. According to some accounts, Okon was connected to powerful figures in the Nigerian government, and her death was suspicious enough to warrant investigation. Dele Giwa, always chasing the truth, reportedly travelled to London to interview her before she died, or to investigate her death. Kayode Soyinka, who survived the bombing, later said he brought photographs and transcripts of the Gloria Okon story back to Nigeria. He and Giwa were reviewing these materials on the morning of the assassination. The theory, then, was simple. Giwa was killed to prevent the Gloria Okon story from being published because it implicated people too powerful to be exposed. But in 2025, nearly 4 decades after the bombing, Yakubu Mohammed, one of Newswatch's co-founders, challenged this narrative in his memoir, Beyond Expectations. Mohammed wrote that until Giwa's death, nobody had heard anything about Gloria Okon in connection to the magazine. He suggested the story was a fiction, a convenient explanation constructed after the fact. A former police commissioner, Abubakar Tsav, testified at the Oputa panel in 1999 that SSS agents had asked Giwa if he had published or was about to publish anything on Gloria Okon. But Mohammed questioned the logic. If Giwa had published it, wouldn't they already know? The truth about Gloria Okon remains elusive, buried beneath layers of rumor and speculation. Ibrahim Babangida was Nigeria's military head of state in 1986. He had come to power through a coup in 1985 and ruled with a firm hand. By October 1986, his government was facing rumors, unrest, and challenges to its authority. Dele Giwa's Newswatch had become a thorn in the side of the regime, publishing stories that embarrassed and exposed. For decades, suspicion has lingered around Babangida. The Parcel bomb bore the presidential seal. The phone calls from military intelligence came from his administration. The failure to investigate, the suppression of information, the fast-tracked libel case, all pointed to a cover-up orchestrated at the highest levels. Babangida has consistently denied involvement. In 2025, at the public presentation of his autobiography, he addressed the Giwa case directly. He said he hoped someday the mystery would be uncovered. He took responsibility as head of state for everything that happened under his watch, but insisted the government was not involved in Giwa's murder. Richard Akinola, author of The Murder of Dele Giwa, The Answered Question, has stated plainly that the Babangida administration was responsible. He argues that the evidence, the timing, and the behavior of state actors all point in one direction. A former police commissioner testified that his initial investigation found everything pointed to state involvement. But there has never been a conviction. No one has been held accountable. Kayode Soyinka, who was sitting across from Dele Giwa when the bomb exploded, lived to tell the story. He was knocked unconscious by the blast but survived with injuries. Years later, he would reflect on how close he came to death that morning. He said he could have been the one to open the parcel when Giwa passed it to him. Soyinka described the moment in chilling detail. Billy brought the package into the study. Giwa placed it on his lap and began to open it. The explosion was instantaneous, violent, and irreversible. Soyinka considers himself extraordinarily lucky to have survived. He has spoken publicly about the assassination over the years, keeping Giwa's memory alive and demanding justice. But like everyone else connected to the case, he has watched as the years passed without answers. 39 years have passed since Dele Giwa was killed. His children have grown up without a father. His wife has lived with the trauma of that Sunday morning. Newswatch magazine, which he co-founded with such hope and energy, continued for years after his death, but eventually ceased publication. The men who interrogated him, who called his house, who may have ordered his death, most of them are old now, or dead, their secrets buried with them. Nigeria has never seen justice for Dele Giwa. The Judicial Commission promised in 1986 never happened. The investigations were blocked or manipulated. The suspects were protected. The case remains officially unsolved, though many believe they know exactly who was responsible. Gani Fawehinmi, the lawyer who fought hardest for answers, died in 2009 without seeing justice. He called it the most frustrating case of his career. Dele Giwa was killed because he asked questions. He investigated power, exposed corruption, and refused to be silenced. In a country where the military ruled with absolute authority, where dissent was crushed and truth was dangerous, he chose to be a journalist anyway. The parcel bomb that killed him was meant to send a message. This is what happens to those who go too far, but it had the opposite effect. Giwa's death became a symbol of press freedom, of resistance, of the cost of truth. His name is still spoken with reverence in Nigerian journalism circles. His legacy still taught to young reporters learning their craft. The question remains, who killed Dele Giwa? The evidence points to the Nigerian state, to the Babangida regime, to intelligence officers who saw him as a threat. The phone calls, the interrogations, the parcel with the presidential seal, all suggest coordination, planning, state involvement. But without a trial, without confessions, without accountability, the question hangs in the air like smoke from an explosion that happened nearly 4 decades ago. On that Sunday morning, in October 1986, Dele Giwa opened a package and lost his life. But the silence that followed his death, the refusal to investigate, the protection of suspects, the absence of justice, speaks louder than any bomb ever could. They got him, but they could not erase the question he left behind. And until Nigeria answers that question, Dele Giwa's story will never truly end.